Hello YouTube, welcome to episode 17 of the Educated Barbarian focused on the meditations. And with the very first quote today, we're actually going to touch upon something that is strangely related to bodybuilding. Are you grieved that you weigh only those few pounds and not 300? If not, is there a greater reason to sorrow if you live only so many years and no longer? You are satisfied with your allotted quantity of matter. Content yourself then likewise with the span of time appointed you. I say it's funny that it's related to bodybuilding because here Marcus Aurelius uses an example of telling you that if you're not disgruntled at not being 300 pounds, then you shouldn't be disgruntled at not having an infinite amount of time in front of you, which doesn't really apply to us because as bodybuilders we want to also always pack on muscles and get bigger and get heavier as a result. So it doesn't work. But in reality, it communicates because it applies in both cases. What he's telling you basically is this. Look at what you have right now. Are you dissatisfied with it? If the answer is yes, then don't fret. You have the ability to just work on it. You have the ability to be in charge of what happens. Being worried about the future is its own punishment. You're not really worried about what's going to happen. That anxiety, it's its own source. And in reality, when you get rid of the anxiety, the associated problems that you think are going to arise also disappear. And it's the same for your body in reality. People who ask me, and people on this channel ask me a ton, how much should I wait in 2 years? If I train for this amount of time, how much would I wait? Can I get to that weight? Blah, blah, blah. All of these are anxieties and fears because it is a fear of not being able to achieve something. But the something you're trying to achieve is a goal that is in the future and hasn't materialized yet. And I can tell you that it will never materialize if you continuously approach it with the same energy. You need to be focused on the present. The future will eventually show up, and when it shows up, it becomes the present, and that's when you deal with it, but not beforehand. Anything beforehand is just a waste of time. Try to persuade men to agree with you, but whether they agree or not, pursue the course you have marked out when the principles of justice point that way. Should one oppose you by force, act with resignation, and should not that you are hurt, use the obstruction for the exercise of some other virtue, and remember that your purpose involved the reservation that you are not to aim at impossibilities. Very complicated sentence. What, after all, was your aim? To make some good effort such as this? Well then, you have succeeded, even though your first purpose be not accomplished. Extremely important mindset to apply to any ideology or philosophy in reality, because the purpose of man is to conquer. Because conquering is multiplying, and multiplying is surviving down the line. The issue is that by default, ideologies are going to be clashing until the end of times. That is inevitable. And I do think that reaching a stage of enlightenment that will allow you to accept that your own life philosophy might be the best, not just for you, the best, the objective best, doesn't mean that you will get the possibility and the chance to push it onto others, and you shouldn't in the first place. That's proselytism. It is across the board bad. And I understand that to some degree it is needed for the survival of the ideology. But what Marcus Aurelius says here is that if you try to force your ideas onto others and they reject them, even if you really keep pushing and you pretty much submit them by force, did you really actually convert them to your ideology? Or are they now your slaves? Are they slaves to the new power that is now their new God? And that, in the truest sense, means that they're not really part of the ideology now. You've created a hierarchy, and within Stoicism, there is no such thing. There's no grade A Stoic, then grade 2, then grade 3, etc., etc. We're all equals in this, and that's very important. So what is said here is that for you, when you take that energy out in the world, that energy of trying to spread, multiply, which is a great energy, let it not be dictated by ego. Do not think that because someone refuses to admit that you are right, don't take it as a direct attack towards you. It might just be that this person is not receptive. You have done what you were supposed to do. You have extended the hand, you have shared knowledge. If they don't want to take it, so be it, move on. For teachers, for people who are interested in teaching and be a greater influence in the world, that can be the difference between a complete failure of a career and of a life and one that is going to be fulfilling. I know many people, especially on YouTube Fitness, who get deeply upset when they feel like they're not being understood or that their words are being rejected because they have tied the acceptance of others to their own self-esteem, and that cannot be. I've said it in the past in the Educated Barbarian, you should be able to be put in a room with 1,000 people that disagree with you and come out of that room unscathed. Because their words don't matter. Their words don't have the power to change your ideology. That is also something that Marcus Aurelius expresses here. Because that is in reality the reason why we get upset. You say something, someone counters. Why do you get upset? You get upset because your ideology is now in question and you are afraid that you're going to be conquered in return and that the enemy will be able to multiply. And as they multiply, more of their members can also attack your members. And if you become part of the group, then you have admitted that your primal and your first ideology was incorrect. Detach yourself from that. If you believe that you are right in your heart and people don't accept it, move on, continuously move on. There is no risk there. And if you feel threatened, if you feel like now you have to question what you used to take for granted, then maybe it is because your past ideology was frail. There were mistakes in it. And therefore, actually going back and looking at it again is a good thing. But the heart that knows what is right never falters. The vainglorious man places his happiness in the action of others. The sensualist finds it in his own sensation. The wise man realizes it is in his own work. So the vainglorious man. Glory is one of the things that men seek the most for multiple reasons. It represents power, it represents access to resources to women or men. It represents acceptance by the group, meaning that you are very unlikely to be ostracized. You wield power over groups, and because you are high on the hierarchy, you're not going to end up at the bottom with no food or potentially the victim of a crime because you won't be scapegoated. There's a lot of advantages, which is the reason why not only do people want to be famous, but as humans, as a species, we respect fame. And it's a very interesting philosophical question too. You could ask yourself, why do so many people glorify, deify, and really worship celebrities? And the reason why is because they see them as having achieved an evolutionary step that they desire for themselves on a biological level, because they understand how good of a position that is, and they also understand that if they manage to make themselves part of a group that looks up to that individual, then they have, in a sense, taken the first step towards achieving the same thing. When in reality they don't, it's a parasocial relationship, they will never get to that level, but it makes them feel better about themselves. And I think that being able to go beyond that and rejecting fame for yourself and for others and just having a baseline level of humans that you respect equally based on their action is a step that the Stoic must take, because it makes you graduate from your animality. You're not just a beast anymore, you are now a sentient human, and that is so important. Across the board, people who worship celebrities and who want to be famous tend to be fairly vapid. This is not the type of person you want to be, I guarantee you that. Then there is the vainglorious man, as I described, who places his happiness in the action of others, which I've covered in the past, I don't need to explain again. The action of others don't have the ability to make your actions better or worse. They cannot make you act and they cannot make you think or feel anything. You decide if the actions of others impact you. Afterwards, you have the sensualist, who finds it in his own sensations. I've touched upon that also, which, it's the carpe diem mentality. It is the hedonist mentality that is really dangerous in a sense, because it is philosophically sound from an evolutionary standpoint if you only look at humans as pleasure centers, and if you just look at the body and the pleasures it can bring as their own goal, when in reality, every single thing, every single shot of dopamine that your brain sends to you, it does so for a reason, right? It does so because you've just done something that makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint. The issue, of course, is that man managed to short-circuit that, and now we know how to trigger the same responses without having done anything. With injecting drugs, inhaling drugs, swallowing drugs, looking at TV, eating junk food, we have found ways that take us away from what we truly are at the start, in what can only be described as a return to animality, because too many people will think, oh, it's the modern life that is doing that to us, as this progression and the endless forward move of humanity made us so that we have now bypassed the necessary tasks that we needed to put in the past to get that pleasure. But that's not a good thing. That should never be regarded as a good thing. It's terrible. It's turning people into dumb cattle. Never seek pleasure for pleasure's sake. Pleasure has to be a reward for hard work, something that makes sense. And even then, rejecting that pleasure altogether can be a good thing. If you do it too much, of course, you're going to fall into the other extreme. So don't do that as well. And as for the wise man, he realizes that all the wolf in the wood is in his own work. And that, across the board, I've always found to be true. There is a contingent of people who point out work and who are resentful towards work, and that's especially true with my generation for some reason. People who say that they don't want to spend 40 hours in an office, they don't want to be part of the rat race, blah, blah, blah. And that I'm not opposed to, meaning that I understand that there is a part of work, of what we are as humans, the productivity of mankind, that has been perverted because it's now used for capitalistic means in the worst sense of the term, for the accumulation of riches for no real reason, and that makes us feel empty inside. But once you've found work, duty that make you feel fulfilled, you are not really working anymore. For me, I have days where I wish there were more than 24 hours because I could get so much more done and I want to. And once you've reached that stage, work becomes your friend. Work becomes vacation in reality. It's funny, I mean, just as an anecdote, but for example, if I get a day off, I will be spending that day off working. I'm just going to work on something different than my actual job, but I'm never going to just lay on the couch for 8 hours because that would actually make me depressed. And I know many people can relate to that. You have it in your power to form no opinion about this or that, and so to have peace of mind. Things material have no power to form our opinions for us. So this is tricky because for someone like me, for example, I'm very judgmental. So if you ask me a question about X topic, even if you think it's very foreign and there's a very small chance I thought about it, I can tell you that I thought about it. I have an opinion about everything. And it might not be a good thing because in reality, it shows that I have an attachment towards those things. And if my opinion is negative, then I'm actively using brain power to entertain an opinion about things that make me mad or make me angry or make me sad. And what Marcus Aurelius says is that the thing doesn't have the power to make you think about it. You are actively thinking about it. And so it's also up to you to cut that cord and to not have an opinion. And so it's detachment in reality, which is a step towards enlightenment, which some people would confuse as idiocy, right? If I ask you, what do you think of X? And you tell me, oh, I don't know, I don't care. Some people will see that and think, oh, they're not involved, they don't want to share what they think. But if you truly don't think anything, if you've removed that from your brain, then it is actually quite advanced and it's really difficult. Accustom yourself to attend closely to what is said by others and as far as possible to penetrate into the mind of the speaker. So in the same vein, it's that weird detachment, it's that mindlessness, right? You don't form opinions, right? It doesn't mean that you are not actually looking at things and thinking about things, but you don't let subjective thoughts form into your brain that are going to taint your judgment in the future. And here it's the same thing. You are listening to someone, you're listening closely, but as they speak, you are not trying to decipher the words. You are not trying to use your own psyche to penetrate theirs, because as you do that, you taint their words. And too many people do that. At this point, it is a plague, because I have found personally that whenever someone says something, the person who interprets them always finds a way to turn it into a completely different opinion. And that is intellectual dishonesty. But a lot of people don't even realize they do that. They are so used to transferring the words of others through their own machine, their own interpretation, that they are presented with the final product and they don't even realize that they did it themselves. And then when they try to argue, they get confused. You have now an entire country, a global group of people who cannot discuss and who are extremely frustrated. They try to talk to people, it always ends with arguments, with anger, and they don't get why. This is why they're constantly using their emotions as a filter for factual information, and that can never work. You will end up, if you do that, with glasses on your face that are constantly going to show you the world for what it isn't. And that will make you crazy. It will either make you go crazy in the sense that you will start thinking that you are losing your mind, or you will be living in a clown world, but you won't be able to realize it. And I think that's the worst kind of crazy, because it is dangerous for your life. You won't be able to see reality coming when it is. What profits not the swarm, profits not the bee. Short, sweet, and true. I think it's always something to keep in mind. It is tough because we are highly individualistic in the West, but in reality, if you only reap the benefits for yourself, eventually you will suffer from it. You need the group to also take the piece of pie that they deserve. And this needs to be done through your own volition. So for example, taxation that then redistributes your money through welfare doesn't accomplish that, for multiple reasons that I'm going to get into, but it is a perversion of what Marcus Aurelius just describes. Because the man that understands that the community around him, the direct people he lives with, will benefit from him making sure that they have good lives, has understood life. If you have a mansion made of gold in a neighborhood made of crap, guess what? Your mansion is worth nothing, because your life now is going to be at the same base level as the neighborhood. So you need people around you to flourish as well. And in reality, the beauty of Stoicism and positive philosophies is that if you are a good person, you're going to radiate, and people are going to see that and are going to want to radiate as well. So they're going to follow the example. So again, because it also goes back, what profits the swarm profits the bee, but what profits the bee profits the swarm. But whatever profits the swarm profits the bee by default, which then profits the swarm. So it's an endless back and forth of positive reinforcement. And the same is also true for the opposite if it only profits one or the other, because the negative repercussions bounce back eventually. If the sailors revile their pilot, or the sick their physician, whom will they follow or obey? And how will the one secure safety to the crew, or the other health to the patients? So here, it's a metaphor, of course, and it exists on two levels, maybe even three. So the first one is, the leader of a group needs to be liked by the group. You can lead with fear. It is possible to lead with fear, but it is not sustainable, because those same people who fear you will try to get out of that fear, because we hate fear as a species. We want to get rid of it as quickly as possible. It's the reason why if someone jump scares you, you'll have two reactions. You're either going to bolt, turn away so you don't see it, or you'll punch them in the face, because you want that gun. And it's the same for leaders who rule by fear. Across the board in history, they always end up being killed or assassinated. But if you are a good leader, people are going to follow you because they benefit from it, and two, they like you. Even if their life is not perfect, they like the person they follow, and that's enough. I've worked in companies and institutions where maybe the leadership wasn't the strongest, but we could sense that the guy who was leading us or the woman liked us and was working for our benefit as well. And therefore, everyone was really productive. And when that happens, guess what? Leadership gets reinforced because the numbers are up. They feel more confident because the team likes them, and therefore they're even better to the team, and it's a virtuous circle. And so that was the first interpretation. The second is going to be within the self, because the Marcus Aurelius standpoint is that from the source connects the soul, but the soul is not the body. And yet the connection of the soul and the body is extremely important. So what is said here is that if if one part of the body, or even the source in reality, has some problems with another portion of it, you're going to have problems. If you hate your body, you're going to have problems. You're going to have mental problems that are going to develop. Vice versa. If you have a problem with the source, and a lot of people are like this, where they have problems with where they come from, they have issues with the idea of a higher being because it really questions the idea of their own self-will, etc. All of that will create problems. You need to have a balance. You need to have an endless trust. This is something I preach on the channel. Confidence. Confidence moves you forward in life. People who tell you not to be confident are people who want either for you to be as miserable as they are, or they're trying to get advantage of you. The confident spirit is unbreakable and unstoppable. And I'm going to finish with this last one because next week we're starting book 7. Consider what men are, whom they speak to please, what they expect to gain, and how they go about to compass their ends. Think how soon eternity will shroud all things, and how much is already shrouded. So I think this is going to be the last quotation I give about that very topic, about the topic of life coming to an end. But this one is interesting and it relates to what I said before because it speaks of the actions of men in relation to who they seek to please, which is extremely important because in reality, in my opinion, the only person you should seek to please is yourself. Live life according to your own principles so that you can go to bed with a smile on your face and a happy soul. Never try to do anything for others' sake because in most cases, when you do that, in reality, what you're doing is you're trying to, sweet talk them or, do a favor for them so that they can pay you back. If they do pay you back, you have now entered a cycle of prostitution. And if they don't, you're going to feel resentment because you didn't get your payback. And it's always negative. There's no way out. It's always negative. And also it's submissive. Aim to never be submissive in life, in everything you do. You can have superiors. I have people who are higher than me in the hierarchy where I work, but they're not my masters, right? I will follow their orders and their leaderships because I recognize their value, but at no point do I recognize that they're smarter than me or they're more important than me. We are just on a different plane of existence within the company, and that's it. In real life, we are all equal. I firmly believe in that, which is why I do not indulge in reverence, but I also do not indulge in crushing people. I'm in between, and I'm going to base my reaction off of the character of people, which I think most would benefit from. So what they expect to gain, as I said, the prostitution thing in reality, and how they go about to compass their hands. So all of that is the plotting aspect of it. Which we all do, by the way. Life is plotting, it's planning things, and I'm really bad at that because I'm constantly scheming in my brains. I'm constantly thinking, okay, if I do this, then this, and I'll get my payback 2 weeks afterwards. And as I said before, with the remark about the future, it's not good. It creates anxiety for nothing. It's great to have a plan. It's great to know what's coming, but don't leave it, right? Don't let the mind pre-live heavens that haven't happened, because if they fail to happen, you're going to feel miserable. Visualization is a great tool, but visualization is not actualization, and it's not leaving those things. It's trying to picture how they will happen so that when they happen, you're prepared. And that's that. Think how eternity will shroud all things and how much is already shrouded. All of these actions will eventually come to an end, and they will have pretty much matter none. And what it means is not that they shouldn't have happened at all. It's that doing them for the sake of the fulfillment and the end goal is not the right thing to do. You should have done that for yourself, and if there is a happy byproduct, then so be it. So I'm going to leave you with that. We are actually pretty close, if I'm not mistaken. I did actually go through the entire book. So I have a few pages here. There's a lot more books, but you will see that we're going to go through them quickly. So I'm always wrong when I try and assess these things like this. This was episode 17. We might be done by episode 20 or 21, and then we'll start the Enchiridion by Epictetus. Then it's going to be On the Happy Life by Seneca, and then we're going to finish with the Discourses by Epictetus again. So Stoicism, we're going to spend a lot of time on it, but I know that you guys enjoy it. I love it as well. It's the philosophy I feel the closest to. So we're going to be taking the time it takes to get all of the nuggets of wisdom from these guys and apply them to our lives. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.